If you explore through Minecraft, you will inevitably come across one of the generated structures. These are things that are not made by people or players, they are made by the game itself, and they are entirely randomly generated. And they come in various shapes and sizes. You can come across villages of different types, you can even come across temples which offer a challenge and a reward for the player. There are even some structures which some may consider to be completely pointless and useless. So I thought it would be really fun to come up with a few ideas of my own and put them out here on YouTube for you to have a look at. So, without further ado, let's take a look at 5 generated structure ideas for Minecraft. The first structure that I want to show you is a little bit on the gruesome side, and yes, this does look like a hanging heart in the Nether. The Nether is an area which I personally feel could use something a little extra, and I'm not talking just about Nether fortresses. So the concept is to have something called a ghast hive, and I've got various different ways of making this to show you. So this is just one concept, and obviously this doesn't look like typical Mojang style, so I have got a couple of more simple versions to show you. But first, let's go over the concept. So as you can see, it hangs over a large area in the Nether, preferably over some lava to make it more dangerous. And the idea is that this houses these little creatures called ghast larvae, and that's what these little things are here, just an idea of what they could look like. And they're just little worms, harmless, don't do any damage. And inside is just like their house or their beehive type thing where they feed on whatever else. So the idea is a player to get here would either have to use an elytra, or they'd have to make a quick block tower and then a bridge over to them. Now, if you're not paying attention, ghasts will be flooding out of this hive and firing ghast balls, fireballs at you, trying to knock you off or break your bridge so that you fall down a very, very long way. So it's like it's a defended thing. And I'm not sure what exactly the prize could be in here, but there definitely could be some cool loot, and it would be interesting to go and see these lava, especially if your portal is nearby. It could be very frustrating to have a big ghast hive like this lurking around. So this is perhaps what it might look more like in-game, something a little more simplified than a very organic looking heart with many different blocks. Even this probably is too much shape for the style of Mojang's generated structures, but I think it would be really cool if you came across something like this and you could see gas like spawning out of it, like the lava were clearly growing up or going pupating or whatever, and they leave the ghast hive and they present a real problem. It really does look quite threatening and menacing, especially as it hangs there from the ceiling of the Nether. And this one is actually slightly different, because if you go inside, there's nether wart, which is what I thought the lava could be feeding on, and then there's actually some spawners here for the lava, so you'd have to come up here and take care of the spawners to stop them going, and then there's ways out of the ghast hive itself all over the structure. I just think this is a really cool idea for the Nether. It adds that extra element of danger to the Nether that it definitely doesn't need, but I think it is a fantastic idea. In fact, we liked the idea so much, we made several versions, and a lot of them were so good that I just have to show you. So the first one was like the heart, which is definitely not the sort of style that would work in game. The second is more like Mojang style, very simplified. And this one is more like organic structures. It kind of looks like sort of a hanging plant or sort of bulb or something hanging from the roof, and it's made out of more things. It's got like tentacles and veins, and it just looks gross. And I think it should look gross. I think with all the gas and the lava inside here, it definitely should resemble something a little more on the grotesque side. You could even call it ghastly. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Now, the Mesa is actually a really cool biome, and it does have some structures because you can see the mine shafts poking out of them, and it's an extremely rare biome with all of these cool blocks to get your hands on. But I thought it would be even cooler if it had something else. Now, there are villages everywhere, but I thought in particular with this one, you could have a custom village that looks like the Mesa Verde. Now, the Mesa Verde is an actual building in real life. It's a historic site in North America, and I'll put a picture of it there. So I tried to kind of replicate that and put it inside some of the canyon biome, and I thought this looks pretty cool. So a lot of the Minecraft villages in-game currently are reskinned and just repurposed for each biome, but I thought, what about doing something slightly different here and adding a red sandstone one with just the idea that it's sunk into the canyon itself, and it just gives it that little bit of aesthetic that makes it way more interesting than a normal one. And for the most part, everything is very similar to a normal Minecraft village in here. There's nothing really that stands out. The buildings are a little bit more detailed than perhaps they are in the normal Minecraft ones. But you could have some particular loot here that could be of interest, or you could even add some redstone in here to make it seem like they had secret hideouts and temples and that kind of thing hidden underneath the Mesa Verde itself. So this was just another idea for a village, and we've all seen plenty of villages. So let's move on to number 3, which is slightly different. A lot of people will know that the Woodland Mansion is found near these dark oak wood forests, but you can see them above the tree line, and I thought very few people actually go inside these roofed forests because they're kind of a pain to get through. But I thought, why not add a structure hidden in them for those that do venture inside? Because this cabin is actually made to go just above the tree line, but you can't see it from the outside of the forest when you're on the floor, which I find very interesting. So, what I want to show you here today is the idea of the cabin in the woods, and this is a little bit of a spooky structure. Now, this is more of a conceptual style, so this is the idea of the cabin in the woods. This is what we kind of wanted it to look like, and we have a second version which looks more like a Mojang style, more simplified. So let's take a look around. It's made out of dark oak planks. Obviously, it's got a very, very run-down look, and it's got these overlapping slabs on the sides. And I have done various sort of cabin designs before, so this is kind of similar to that. And it's got a very higgledy-piggledy kind of style to it. And if we go around to the inside, it's actually got a bit of a challenge inside it. So not only does it look a bit spooky on its own, if you go inside, it's actually a little bit of a maze. So you can see in here that you can't get inside. You have to walk around to try and find your way through this cabin. And because it's so cramped, and despite being quite a big build, it can seem a little bit spooky, especially as it gets darker as you go through. So this can present somewhat of a challenge, and eventually you'll fall through into the cellar, and this is actually where we were looking into earlier. And you fall through in here, and there's another little maze, which is dark enough to spawn mobs in, and there's a little bit of a redstone trail there, which could freak some people out. And there could be a few chests in here if you want, but eventually you will find a way out. Now, this looks like the way out, but it's not, because you can't get quite up there. Of course, you could just, delete the block and get up that way, but we're just assuming that everyone's going to behave and play fairly. So there is actually a way out here. The maze itself isn't actually that big, but it's big enough to be more than just a little bit annoying. And eventually you get to the end. Now, there could be loads of chests and stuff here, and then you realize that you come out the side the whole time. I mean, you could go in this way, but more than likely you're going to go through the front door. So anyway, that is the concept for the cabin in the woods. But of course, we made a Mojang style one to display what it might actually look like in game. So this is it. It's a very, very similar style and design with the A-fronts and the little dormers on the top. It's got a chimney, all the same color palette. It's a bit more simplified than the other one. It's got less details, less higgledy-piggledy stuff. Now, it's still got broken windows. It still looks fairly spooky. Maybe not as spooky, but you can definitely tell that this is a run-down house. And the ideas are very similar. You go inside, and there's a bit of a maze. There's a put-out fire here with some coal ore. And there's even a little bit of a hole here. And if you're not careful, you either fall through, or if you take the ladder upstairs, there's actually a little trap here where the tripwire here updates a bunch of carpets, and it actually looks like there's some chests there for your loot, or your reward for going in here. This tripwire updates the carpets and you fall through. This was a bit of an oversight. The vines have crept in and broken the fall somewhat, but you fall through and a very similar task is ahead of you of working out where to go. And there's, trap chest. Oh, an actual trap chest that actually produced a trap. There is some loot in here. The only difference here is that the maze is much simpler, and when you get out, it doesn't go straight into the open. You actually have to delete some of the blocks and sort of break your way out, and then you realize that you were under the house the whole time. Again, this is one that I think is really cool. It's very similar to the Woodland Mansion. It's like a much smaller version, but this is meant to be really spooky as a little structure to explore, and it's definitely meant to be a very small, challenging maze. Although the Woodland Mansion does kind of cover those bases. But I thought this being nestled in the dark oak forest, which I'll be honest, I don't tend to walk through because they're so compact. Could get a bit claustrophobic in there. So that's just an idea for there. Let's move on to the next one. The fourth idea is surrounding the flower biome. And this is a really lovely biome, and I thought it could definitely do with a structure. So we made a druid well. So this is kind of like ruins that you might have seen in other modded versions of Minecraft. It's got loads of those kinds of things in them. But the idea here is that it's just some ruins that you can come across. You can take care of the wheat and, harvest that kind of stuff. You can even take some of the stone brick. And it's just meant to be something that you encounter, but it actually has a secret. Despite being in this flowery, lovely biome, it actually harbours a bit of a secret, which is why I've placed Steve here to assist me with the demonstration. So the idea is that there's a friendly mob up here, maybe a druid, or maybe just a villager that's just a bit fancy or whatever. If Steve here happens to run over the pressure plate, it opens up the inside of this well, leading the player... Steve, I need you to stand on that for me. Come on, man. Steve. Come on. There we go. Thank you, Steve. You're being very unhelpful. So when Steve eventually stands on that, you're going to get a big piston opening noise. And then you'll think, ooh, something opened. And hopefully the player will just drop down without a second thought and go, oh no. So what we've created here is sort of a little altar and lots of potion-y type things going on. So this is very resemblant of a dungeon, a normal Minecraft dungeon, but instead of cobble, it's mossy stone bricks, cracked stone bricks, and then we've got a couple of witches down here, which are clearly here to take care of you as you land straight on the sacrificial table. So that's the idea behind this one. It's a bit of a trick, it's a bit of a bamboozle. Steve up there is betraying you, even though he was probably trying to save me by not standing on that very cooperatively. So that's the idea, and of course, it won't be easy for a villager to just randomly stand on the pressure plate. So you might need to actually have a custom mob, maybe a druid, or maybe even a villager in disguise, or witch in disguise, and they will be attracted to this pressure plate when the player comes along to try and lure them inside of the little dungeon down here. The main issue that I can see with this particular design is you can definitely hear the witches cackling and laughing underneath you. And you're like, well, something's definitely not right here, so that might not fool everyone, but I thought it would be a pretty cool structure to add in-game. For our final structure, it's something a little bit different, because in Minecraft there are multiple temples in the game. There's a desert one, there's a jungle one, and there are other challenges as well with the stronghold and the nether fortress. And I thought, since the game does do lots of temples, why not try and design one of my own? So I came up with this idea, and you might be wondering where it is, because it's not around here. Well, it's up there. And it's extremely high up. In fact, it's about at the limit of the game. Now, I need you to indulge me for a second here and pretend that that sky temple is above the building limit. Now, I know that that isn't physically possible, but this entire video is hypothetical and not going to happen, so it's just a fun theory. So, Let's pretend that that is above the build limit and I, as a player, cannot physically change it. That means I'm not able to make a 1x1 pole all the way up to the top, because eventually I'd hit the limit and I wouldn't be able to build any higher, and I wouldn't be able to reach the temple up there. Meaning there's only one way to get up there, meaning it's an end game in general. You'd need to use the Elytra and some fireworks. So you pop on the Elytra and we're going to fly up to the temple. Now this is actually fairly easy. Once you've got the Elytra, it'll only take a couple of fireworks to make it to the top. And you might realise that there's actually some symbols on there, and that's some spoilers for the Evo fans out there for tomorrow. But there's some symbols here, and this is actually in Galactic. This is the Minecraft enchanting table text. This actually spells out sky, S-K-Y. And I just thought that was a nice way of decorating this very simple pillar, which is obviously pure Mojang style. I didn't change anything or make it any more elaborate. So the idea is, you Elytra up to here, probably hit it, bounce off, and you're in. Great, but I can't build, and let's assume also that I can't break anything. So you come across this room with one chest in it, and all it has is a potion of levitation. So the idea of, or the challenge of this particular pillar or obelisk or whatever you want to call it, sky temple, is I can't jump up there. I could technically Elytra up there, but that could get very, very glitchy. Very, very glitchy indeed. Trying to fly through all these holes could be extremely difficult. So you take the potion of levitation, and it is running for exactly 17 seconds, which is just enough to make it so that if you bash your head for too long, you won't make it to the top. And it will just run out, hopefully, as we get ourselves in this room. So just ran out. So if you mess up too much and you don't make it, or you bump your head too much, your potion's going to run out before you can get to this top layer and claim that sweet, sweet loot, which I just made up is just a bunch of diamonds and Elytra. I haven't come up with any of the rewards for these sorts of temples. I've just shown the design of them. So I thought this was a really unique challenge, using a potion that you can't actually get in the version that I'm using. I had to use a command to get this. It's one of those custom ones. But I thought you could have 3 attempts at it, or maybe the actual number could be 16 seconds, seeing as I made it with like a second to spare. It depends how forgiving it could be. But it's very, very fun to try and do. It's quite stressful, especially as you know you've only got a few attempts to do it. And I haven't seen any sort of challenges in Minecraft that are anything like this, to be honest with you, other than the shulkers in the end. And since this is end game, it all kind of makes sense. So I thought that'd be really fun. It also, if you just get to the top using it, you could open it and your potion could run out and you go all the way down here and it could cancel your chest activation. So that was the Sky Temple idea, and that actually concludes all 5 of my structure ideas. Now, I would love to hear from you guys. Obviously, I've just scratched the surface with the possibilities on this one. You can see the ghast hives that I went over first. Probably my favorite design out of all of them, the Mesa Verde and the cabin in the woods. There are so many possibilities and there's so much scope for more. They recently added shipwrecks to the game. Absolutely perfect. The sea always needs more content. There's the Druid Well, or whatever you want to call it, the Witch Trap, and of course the Sky Temple, which we just went over. So there are loads of options here, and I was just trying to be as creative as I could, coming up with some ideas for structures in places where I think the game currently could use something there. In particular, the sort of the cabin in the woods one, or the one in the canyon. It's such a shame that some of these rarer biomes don't have something for you to explore or seek out, and I think there's a real opportunity for more of these things. Now, bit of a disclaimer, obviously, all of these things are totally hypothetical. Please, please, please don't go tweeting everyone, telling them to add this in game. It's just really fun discussing ideas and getting creative with these things. So, you know, the ghast hive, for example, I really love the idea, but it probably wouldn't work in game. It'd be an absolute nightmare to add, and probably doesn't work as a challenge for the player. There's probably more than enough challenges in the Nether already. but it sure is fun to come up with different designs and ideas and speculate how these things might work. And it also gets you guys thinking about these sorts of things and how you could make your own if you're ever making an adventure map or anything like that for other people to explore. So, that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know down below which one was your favourite. Mine was the Ghast Hive. And I would love to hear some ideas of your own in the comments below. So, thank you very much again. Goodbye.